question. Yeah, the DOE SuperTruck program is a 5-year program, started in 2010. And the end point is demonstration vehicles by all the participants that include a 50% efficient brake thermal efficiency engine in it. So looking at 2015 for the demonstration, one would think that the follow-on technologies would probably take 2 to 4 years to commercialize and bring into the marketplace.
Yeah, I'd agree. We're in that program as well, and we're looking at what 42 to 56 kind of percent improvement in efficiencies.
The good news going beyond that is that part of the SuperTruck program is a paper study to get to a 55% efficient engine at 65 miles per hour, fully loaded. So there is not just 50, but again, the look beyond that for the next generation products.
We saw.
Other questions in the crowd there?
I've got one. We saw obviously an uptick in the cost of engines with the 2010 engine technology. Sounds like we're there with 2014 just about across the board with no real significant increase in price. What do you guys see as the potential costs for fleets in terms of new engine technology going forward to meet 2018? Are we looking at another significant? Are we looking at another $7,000-8,000 increase in engine costs?
I think not to talk specifics, but I think the answer to that question is pretty much no. I mean, again, if you look at what we're doing from a Daimler standpoint, from a Detroit standpoint, they're all significant when they're added up, but it's not major things. We're not adding on an SCR. We're not adding on a DPF. So I think it's safe to assume that you're not going to see extreme price increases that we've seen in the past. But that said, obviously, prices do go up over time. So, but I think the other thing too is you're going to start to see that payback equation is really going to work out for the customers too. I mean, as if you think that the cost isn't going up as drastically as it has in the past, but the payback of 2, 3, 4, whatever we deliver adds up, that payback equation should be tilted in the customer's favor.
In a matter of a couple of years and not in terms of ROI. It's
Correct.
Not going to be a long term.
Correct.
Other questions from the audience? I've got one more for you guys, and that involves the natural gas. We talked some about that yesterday on our fleet panel, and I think just about all of you now have a solution in the marketplace and have had some in some cases for several years. I guess some of the frustration has been with the infrastructure build out and availability. Fleets that are looking to implement this technology have had to be very proactive in either installing LNG or CNG fueling stations at their locations. What do you guys see as really that tipping point for acceptance of natural gas engines in the marketplace beyond it really being right now kind of pockets of acceptance in geographic locations?
Certainly on the MAC side, the refuse business, certainly, residential collection, industrial collection is moving very, very rapidly. It's up to about 70% right now, natural gas. And that is a number that surprised everybody that it ramped up that quickly. Some of the other areas, we can't be sure for the various reasons that you mentioned, infrastructure being the one. LNG is very good because it packages easily or easier on the truck versus CNG. But CNG is a whole lot easier to deal with. So there's all these, buy-offs or trade-offs that the customer, depending on that particular application, has to make. And also, it's not just natural gas. I mean, there's biofuels up to 100%. You've got biomass fuels. You've got dimethyl ether, and on and on. So there's a lot going on besides, the two derivatives of, natural gas.
I think the other thing to look at is when natural gas was introduced into the marketplace. It was more for, as Dave said, the refuge or the school bus market, where things stay in a certain refined vicinity and come home every night for fueling. So it made it very easy. As we continue to see more availability of natural gas and the infrastructure is developing, as the engines are able to go further distances and not have to come home every night or stay in a certain geographical location. And we're seeing that with the different fueling stations adding capability. I think Shell announced it recently. They're going to add more fueling stations at their natural gas availability at their stations as well.
Yeah, one add-on to that. Actually, just 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we completed a cross-country natural gas tour. We took a Cascadia powered by an ISX-12G from Long Beach, California, all the way to DC and hit CNG stations all across the country. So, you know, the trucks can do the work. I think with the ISX-12 and the ISX-15 coming, it's not an issue anymore of not having the right engine for the right application. It is, Bob Carrick is our manager of natural gas in Daimler, and he coined a phrase that I thought was great. It's no longer the chicken or the egg, it's the chicken or the feed, right? We can hatch as many chickens as you want to buy, but we need the feed, which is the infrastructure out there to do it. And even though we made it cross-country, it was something that probably wasn't commercially viable, if you will. I mean, there was a lot of planning involved, but as that infrastructure grows, the technology's there, absolutely.
And Dan, I know I was at a Peterbilt Natural Gas event back in February, and you guys were caught off guard in terms of the audience interest. I think you guys were expecting like 80 fleet customers, and you had over 180 in attendance for that event. I think that really speaks to some real pent-up demand. I think you guys timed it perfectly because fuel had just tipped, or diesel had just tipped $4 a gallon that week, so it was excellent timing on your part. But what do you guys see?
Well, from a future standpoint, the growth is really segment by segment. Having local stations or having an infrastructure where somebody can come in and fuel your vehicles at night on your lot, similar to what's done in many diesel applications, is one of the steps that's going to help the locally domiciled operations. Over the road, it's probably the CNG, LNG stations, probably every 200 miles, certainly on all the interstate roads. Have to be at a point where, because of the difference in energy content in natural gas versus diesel, the stations need to be there in sufficient quantities and locations to ensure that a driver doesn't run out of fuel when he's in the middle of his route.
Yeah, and I know that Clean Energy has stated that they plan by the end of the year to have a corridor where you can go from LA to Houston on LNG. So, you know, if that actually comes to fruition, I think we'll certainly see an uptick in demand and interest in that. Any other questions from the audience?
To the truck manufacturers, do you know of any reason why they seem to continue to build the 6x4 axle configurations? It doesn't look like, unless you really special order it, nobody's building one differential tractors on a 3-axle configuration. I mean, you can lose over 1,000 pounds and pick up a half mile per gallon if you just go with one differential.
And good point in terms of the opportunity that's out there with a 6x2 configuration. I think that for most of the OEMs, we're certainly offering that to our customers as an option out of the factory. I think from a fleet operations standpoint, they're looking at the full life cycle cost of the vehicle, and part of that is the trade cycle. And in the used truck market, the 6x2, called a dead axle tandem, is not necessarily fully accepted in terms of that added value. So looking at the full equation, it works for some, it doesn't work for others.
What we're doing is we're working on a project right now, and it's said the resale value, like in California, there's a lot of 2 axles around, so I always found it remarkable if a trade came in that was a 6x2 and you cut the rear number 3 axle off and threw it in the dumpster, the truck was actually worth more money, you know, and it just, you know, really? And they did it every day. So what we're looking at, and we're going to have a couple of prototypes built probably in the end of August, is we're looking at building a 6x2, but it'll be the number 3 axle that'll drive, and then the number 2 axle will have like a straight through shaft. So we're going to have like a dummy carrier in the place. So if you recall Mack axles, drive axles, we have top-mounted carriers. So this, you know, plug, for lack of a better term, is exactly dimensionally the same size as the carrier for the through shaft, and it's also got the same exact position for the torque rod. So when it comes to trade-in value, you take the plug out, you put a carrier in, slide the axles in, everything, you don't have to cut, chop, modify, or anything. So that's something we're looking at. But the 6x2 in certain areas seems to be accepted. Other areas, it's a hard sell. And the other thing is there's always debates on exactly how much weight do you save and how much fuel economy do you gain. And it's almost depending on who you talk to. One's A, the other one's Z. And I mean, it's not often that you have such disparate opinions on one item. But we are looking at it.
One other reason too is if you get out there and talk to drivers very much, they're not, the 6x2 isn't that accepted by drivers. So it's one of those things where, you know, with down speeding, right? I mean, if there's a lot of technologies that we can use to increase fuel economy and the efficiencies, but if they're not accepted by the customer, the fleet, and the driver, you got to have both. And the 6x2s right now struggle with the drivers a lot of times.
I appreciated the responses on what you see in the growth in the future relative to natural gas. I'm curious what growth you're experiencing right now, and if you don't want to put a number to it, how about an adjective?
You know, I'll start. A couple weeks ago, our CEO, Martin Daum, actually answered that very question. And if you look at this year, it's about 1 in 150 trucks are going to be natural gas. So we still see it as a pretty niche market. I mean, everybody up there today, I mean, talked about diesel. You know, from my standpoint, we talked about diesel, you know, for the foreseeable future. If you use your crystal ball for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, probably longer than that, diesel is here. Natural gas has got some good legs, and it's going to make it inroads. But I mean, if you look at 1 in 150, a lot of the resources still going towards, a lot of the purchases are still diesel, obviously, majority.
For us, obviously, it's, intracity applications, refuse collection vehicles. That's where we see a real benefit. That is certainly the hot item right now. But as I always like to say, 114 years ago, Rudolf Diesel was a genius. I maintain 114 years later, he's a genius today. So you show me a fuel that gets you the energy that you can get out of diesel, and you have another convert, and I don't know that we're quite there with gas yet, although that, it seems that if you stub your toe in a field out here, you get natural gas leaking out of the ground. So, I mean, it's certainly, I think that you've got a lot of politics behind it, and you've got a lot of money behind it.
And I think as we, being a dual source fuel engine supplier, manufacturer, like these gentlemen have said, diesel will continue to be the dominant engine. It's just, there is going to be growth. I can't give you a number, but it will continue to grow.
Okay, we've got time for one more question here.
Well, just my comment, because Dan, you have the chart, and natural gas was truly off the chart because there's no intersection of the benefit and the cost currently with natural gas. And no offense to the panel here, it's because of the cost of the product. It's what you're making. So it's off the chart. It doesn't work. So industry can't, regardless of infrastructure, regardless of an effective use of the vehicle on a run across the country, there's no payback for industry. it's off the
No.
chart. That payback
What's
is
the
literally
chart?
off the chart. You don't have the chart up here,
Okay.
but you have the chart, and it's not on the chart.
Well, what we've seen, Larry, is that based on the cost of a gallon of diesel being, as we've said, $4 to $5 in California, a diesel equivalent gallon of natural gas is around $2. In some cases in the country, it's under $2 a gallon. So the payback is in the cost of the fuel. We understand the overall package of the product is more expensive. And we,
That chart would have that differential benefit at $12.
Yeah.
I remember the chart.
we ran the numbers, and I think we saw it was about a no more than a 3-year payback running natural gas.
At what number? I mean,
At about a $2 diesel gas equivalent for natural gas, and $3.50 to $4 diesel fuel.
Okay, since I'm the moderator, I get the last word. The Nat Gas Act that's in Congress, that's been assigned to both committees, which has kind of died in both committees, looking for incentives for infrastructure build-out and incentives for the vehicles. It's not really moving anywhere. It's more difficult to ask the federal government for money when the infrastructure is being built out on its own without federal assistance, and when folks are starting to purchase the vehicles on their own without federal assistance. That's not to say that we're still not pushing for it, but right now with the composition of this Congress and just the very nature of this Congress not getting a whole lot done, don't count on any incentives to help offset the cost anytime soon. But we're still pushing to get those incentives to take care of the other part of your question.
we shouldn't be dependent on the
Exactly.
Yeah, right, no.
Exactly.
And we know that's a hurdle.
Well, I've been given the red light to stop, so I thank you so much for listening and attending today's panel discussion. I want to thank the panelists for a great job, and let's all give them a warm round of applause.